The Galactic Union had stood for many centuries. It was not a government but more like a council of many different species spread across hundreds of star systems. They met in great halls built on neutral worlds, where their voices carried across wide chambers filled with shining light and banners of many colors. Most decisions were debated for days, sometimes for weeks, but there was one matter that never needed debate. Everyone in the Union knew one rule: never enter the human region. That rule was old, older than most of the members alive. Long ago, some fleets had tried, and none had ever returned. Records of those events were vague. Ships vanished, armadas broken, and survivors never came back to tell their tale. The Union only knew one truth: the humans were dangerous, far more than they seemed. But now a new species was rising, the Zoroth. They were strong, proud, and full of hunger for expansion. They came from the dark side of the galaxy, a place filled with red suns and iron-rich worlds. In just 2 generations, they had built huge fleets of warships, each one bristling with weapons and thick armor. Their leader, Vorak, was bold and loud. He wanted to show the galaxy that the Zoroth were the true rulers of the stars. When the council warned him not to cross into Earth's region, he did not listen. The chamber that day was tense. Representatives from many races sat in curved rows, looking down at the center stage where Vorak stood. His scales shimmered a deep green under the hall's lights, and his eyes burned with fire. His fleet commanders stood behind him, silent but proud. An elder of the Union rose slowly from his place. He was from a thin, long-lived race known for patience. His voice echoed across the chamber, steady and calm. Vorak of Zoroth, you may conquer stars and burn worlds, but hear our warning. Stay away from Earth's region. That world and its people are under protection. Do not test them. Laughter broke out among the Zoroth ranks. Vorak tilted his head, showing his teeth in a grin. Protection, he said. From who? Weak worlds hide behind your words. We are not weak. We are the storm. No one will stop us. Not even these humans you whisper about. The elder did not answer his mockery. He simply said again, you will not return if you go. The chamber grew quiet. Some races lowered their heads, remembering old tales. Others looked at the Zoroth with pity, knowing what pride could cost. But Vorak did not see warning, he saw only fear. Your council trembles at shadows, Vorak said, raising his claws toward the ceiling. We will shine a light on those shadows and break them. The galaxy will see who is master. He turned and walked out, his fleet commanders following him. His laughter echoed against the stone walls as the doors closed behind him. The Union chamber remained silent for a long time. Then the elder sat back down, whispering to those beside him, another who will not listen. News of the meeting spread quickly across the galaxy. Merchants, captains, and travelers carried the story with them. Some whispered that the Zoroth would prove once and for all that humans were nothing special. Others shook their heads and spoke of fleets that had vanished in the past. On Vorak's homeworld, great parades filled the cities. Citizens cheered as warships lifted from the surface, engines burning bright against the sky. The 3 largest armadas the Zoroth had ever built gathered in orbit, each carrying thousands of soldiers. From above, they looked like iron clouds covering the planet. Vorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the stars ahead. His heart burned with pride. They fear us, he told his commanders. They hide behind old tales. When we return, it will be with Earth under our banner. His second in command, a seasoned officer named Drak, shifted uneasily. The Union elder spoke with certainty, "My lord." He did not look like a being who spoke empty threats. "Are we sure the humans are as weak as they appear?" Vorak laughed again, a low, rolling sound. "Weak ships. A small planet. No great empire. They hide in one region of space. What power could they have? We will crush them and prove the galaxy wrong." Drak fell silent, though unease lingered in his eyes. The Armadas began their journey. Across the stars they moved, dark fleets that blotted out light as they passed. Worlds along their path trembled but did not resist. They knew nothing could stand in their way. Yet at every stop, whispers followed the Zoroth ships. Old captains in spaceports muttered, "They were warned. They will not return." Traders repeated the words again and again. Stories grew in detailed tales of humans who fought like no other, of ships that moved like shadows, of battles lost before they began. The Zoroth soldiers laughed when they heard such stories. "Old fears," they said. "The humans cannot match our armadas." But the Union elders, watching from afar, shook their heads. They had seen this before. They had seen proud species march into the human region, sure of their victory. And they had seen only silence return. The Zoroth armadas moved like a storm across the stars. 3 massive fleets stretched in long lines, their warships glowing red under the power of their drives. Each ship carried rows of cannons, missile bays, and heavy shields. The Zoroth were proud of their design. They believed no other race could match the strength of their war machines. Vorak stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel larger than most cities on his home world. Around him, the command deck pulsed with light from control screens. Officers shouted orders, guiding the fleet through deep space. His eyes stayed fixed on the star maps, where a glowing path showed their course toward Earth's region. "Soon," he said with a grin, "the galaxy will know the Zoroth rule the stars." His second in command, Drak, looked uneasy. He had fought many wars, and his instincts whispered caution. But he knew his leader's pride was stronger than any warning. "My lord," Drak said, "perhaps we should send scouts ahead. We do not know the true size of human defenses. A smaller force could test their response before the full fleets arrive." Vorak waved his claw as if brushing aside a shadow. "No need. If humans are as weak as they seem, scouts will only waste time. If they are strong, our full strength will crush them in one strike." The officers around them nodded, eager to believe their leader. They wanted glory, and they wanted to prove the Union wrong. Across the fleets, soldiers celebrated. Songs of conquest filled the halls of their warships. They spoke of Earth as if it were already theirs. To them, humans were no different from the smaller races they had already conquered. But in the quieter corners of the ships, some Zoroth whispered uneasily. They remembered the words of the Union elder. They remembered how other fleets had vanished. Yet none spoke too loudly. No one wished to be seen as weak in front of Vorak. Days passed as the armadas pushed forward. They crossed neutral sectors and ignored the watchful eyes of traders who hurried away at the sight of their ships. At every port they passed, rumors spread like fire. "The Zoroth are going to Earth's region," captains whispered. "They will vanish like the others," old spacers said. "Arrogance will break them." The Union Council followed the fleets from afar. Reports came in every day, showing the Zoroth moving closer and closer to Sol space. Many in the council shook their heads, already knowing the end. But none tried to stop Vorak. The warning had been given. The choice was his. At last, the fleets reached the final border before Earth's region. The stars there were quiet, the space wide and empty. It seemed too peaceful, and Drac felt the weight of silence pressing against him. "My lord," Drac said again, lowering his voice. "This feels wrong. No patrols. No defenses. No sign of resistance. If humans were truly dangerous, would they not guard their borders?" Vorak laughed, the sound sharp and harsh. "This only proves they are weak. They hide behind fear, not ships. They hope their legend alone will scare us away. But we are not afraid." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleets. We cross into their region now." The command decks filled with motion. Lights flickered, engines roared, and the ships aligned in perfect formation. 3 great waves of iron and fire, ready to crash into the unknown. As the fleets advanced, a strange silence filled the space around them. No resistance came. No human ships appeared. Only distant stars and dark emptiness stretched before them. The soldiers began to laugh, convinced the humans had nothing to show. "Where are these mighty defenders?" one captain asked with a sneer. "Where are their ghost fleets?" another joked. "They are cowards hiding in the shadows," the soldiers said. Vorak smiled. "Soon, the shadows will burn away. Soon, the galaxy will see the truth." But deep inside, Drac felt the silence was not weakness. It was waiting. It was the calm before a storm. Hours later, the first human signal reached them. A simple voice, carried across open channels. "You were warned. Turn back." The voice was calm, not loud, not angry. Just steady, like stone. It carried no threat, no roar of pride. Yet it filled the Zarath bridges with sudden weight. Vorak snarled. "Who dares speak to us this way?" The message repeated, word for word. "You were warned. Turn back. No more, no less." Zarath officers laughed nervously, but their laughter was thin. Some shifted in their seats, unsure. Drac looked at Vorak, waiting for his command. "Answer them." Drac asked. Vorak rose to his full height. His claws clicked against the metal floor as he stepped forward. "Yes. Answer them. Tell these humans who we are. Tell them we do not turn back." The officer sent the reply, his voice shaking slightly as he repeated Vorak's words. Silence followed. No answer came. Vorak raised his hand. "Advance. Let the humans see our strength. Let them tremble." The fleets pushed forward, deeper into Earth's region. The stars around them shifted, brighter now, closer to Sol. Still, no resistance came. The silence stretched longer, heavier, until even the most confident soldiers began to feel unease. Vorak, blinded by pride, saw only victory ahead. But Drac whispered quietly to himself, a thought he dared not share aloud. Perhaps the Union was right. Perhaps this is the last march we will ever make. The Zarath fleets pressed deeper into Earth's region, their warships flying in long lines across the dark. The silence grew heavier with each passing hour. There were no patrols, no stations, no defenses. To many Zarath, it felt like proof that humans were only a myth, their strength exaggerated by the Union to keep others away. Vorak stood tall at the center of his flagship's bridge, claws folded behind his back. His voice carried with pride. "See? Empty skies. This is the power the Union feared? This is what they told us to avoid? Shadows and silence." His commanders laughed, repeating his words. Yet Drac, his second in command, did not laugh. He studied the sensor screens, eyes narrowing at faint blips at the very edge of detection. "My lord," Drax said carefully, "there is movement ahead. Small ships, moving in formation. Their signal codes do not match any Union design." Vorak leaned forward, studying the shapes. They were tiny compared to Zoroth cruisers, no larger than fighters. Old designs, at least to his eyes. He chuckled. "These are the defenders of Earth? Fragile toys. Sweep them aside." The Zoroth fleet spread out, preparing to surround the human patrol ships. But then a voice cut across the open channel. "You were warned. Turn back." It was the same calm tone they had heard before. The voice carried no fear, no anger, no arrogance. It was simply steady. Vorak's lips curled in amusement. "So the humans finally speak. Tell them we do not turn back. Tell them they face the Armadas of Zoroth." The officer sent the reply. Silence followed. Then the human voice returned. "This is your last warning." The Zoroth laughed loudly across their bridges. Soldiers clashed their weapons against the metal floors, roaring for battle. The order was given. Weapons powered up, shields glowed, and the fleets prepared to strike. "Destroy them," Vorak commanded. The Zoroth warships opened fire. Beams of energy and missiles streaked across the void toward the small human patrol ships. The battle should have ended in a single moment. But then something impossible happened. The human ships moved. Not like any ships the Zoroth had ever seen. They darted, twisted, and rolled with a grace that defied logic. They did not fly like machines, they moved like hunters, like living things. Every missile missed. Every beam of energy struck only empty space. Drax's eyes widened. Impossible. In seconds, the human patrol returned fire. Their weapons were small, yet each shot landed with perfect aim. A single bright strike hit a Zoroth cruiser, piercing its shields and tearing through its hull. The warship exploded, fragments scattering across the dark. Silence fell on the Zoroth bridges. Then alarms blared as more ships were struck. Vorak slammed his claw against the arm of his chair. "They are small. Break them. Overwhelm them with numbers." The Zoroth Armada surged forward, thousands of ships surrounding the human patrol. Yet the humans did not retreat. They weaved through the chaos, firing with deadly precision. Every movement was exact, every strike chosen. Zoroth ships fell one after another. On the bridge, Drax watched the battle unfold with growing dread. He could not understand how such small ships could move this way, or why their weapons struck so perfectly. "These are not ordinary pilots," he whispered. The human commander, Reed, spoke again over the channel. His voice was calm, as if the battle did not disturb him at all. "You chose this." Then the human ships vanished from sight. The Zoroth sensors screamed with confusion as the patrol disappeared, reappeared, and struck again from new angles. It was like fighting ghosts. Vorak roared in anger. "Find them! Destroy them!" But no matter how many ships the Zoroth sent, the humans always struck first. Their small patrol tore through larger cruisers with impossible speed. The arrogance of the Zoroth turned to panic as they realized they were not fighting weaklings. They were fighting predators. Hours passed, and the battlefield became littered with wrecks. Fires burned in the cold vacuum of space, and shattered hulls drifted without power. Thousands of Zoroth soldiers were lost, while not a single human ship had been destroyed. Vorak's claws trembled as he gripped the command rail. His pride fought against the truth his eyes could not deny. These are only patrol ships, Drax said quietly. His voice was heavy with fear. If their patrols fight like this, what waits deeper inside their region? The question hung in the air. None dared to answer. The human voice spoke one last time, steady as ever. Leave now. This is your only chance. But Vorak's pride would not let him retreat. His voice thundered across the bridge. We are Zoroth. We do not run from insects. Call in the full Armadas. We will crush them all. Drac closed his eyes, hearing the doom in those words. The humans had given their warning. Twice. And now the storm was only beginning. The battlefield near the edge of Earth's region was no longer silent. It was filled with burning wrecks of Zoroth ships and trails of fire drifting across the void. The first encounter with the human patrol had ended in disaster for the proud invaders. Yet Vorak, the leader of the Zoroth Armadas, refused to retreat. On the bridge of his flagship, he stood tall, his green scales catching the red light of warning screens. His claws pressed against the rail as his voice thundered. Summon the full fleets. We will not be shamed by a handful of small ships. Across the Armadas, his order spread. Warships shifted formation, thousands of engines roaring as they prepared for a full assault. The Zoroth believed that raw power would succeed where surprise had failed. Drac, his second in command, leaned closer. His voice was low, careful. My lord, those human patrol ships fought as if they were more than machines. Their movements, their aim, their tactics, they were unlike anything I have seen. If this was only the beginning, perhaps Vorak cut him off with a growl. Enough. Do not speak of fear. Do not give strength to legends. We are Zoroth. We crush enemies with fire and iron. These humans are no different. The order was given. The fleets advanced deeper into Earth's region, their weapons armed, their soldiers ready for battle. Moments later, the humans appeared again. At first, it was only a handful of ships, small, dark, moving with eerie silence. Then more came, sliding out of shadows as if the stars themselves had opened. They did not look powerful. Their hulls were plain, their shapes simple. But their movement carried purpose, sharp and exact, like predators circling prey. Commander Reed, leading the human fleet, sent one final message across the channel. His voice was calm, as it had been before. You were warned. This is the cost of arrogance. The signal ended. And then the sky lit up. The humans struck first. Their ships darted forward with speed the Zoroth could not match. Rail weapons fired bright streaks that cut through shields as if they were air. Missiles launched in tight swarms, weaving past defenses and slamming into engines. Within the first minute, a dozen Zoroth cruisers exploded. The invaders answered with a storm of fire. Cannons roared, beams of energy tore across the void, and missiles spread like rain. But the human ships moved through it all. They twisted, dodged, and slid between lines of fire. Where Zoroth gunners expected slow targets, they found only empty space. Drac's voice trembled as he watched the chaos. They are reading us. Every move we make, they are ahead of it. On the bridges of Zoroth warships, panic spread. Officers shouted, trying to adjust firing patterns, but nothing worked. Every attack missed. Every defense was broken. A single human corvette darted into the middle of a Zoroth formation. Alone, it seemed helpless. Dozens of cruisers locked onto it, weapons charging. Yet before they could fire, the corvette spun in a sharp roll and unleashed a burst of energy. In one strike, 3 Zoroth ships tore apart, their hulls splitting open. The corvette vanished before the others could react. "Impossible," one Zarath commander whispered, his scales pale with fear. Vorak's claws dug into the rail, sparks flying from the metal. His voice shook with fury. "Fight! Do not let them control the field. Surround them, crush them." But his orders were useless. The humans did not fight where he commanded. They appeared and vanished at will, striking weak points, cutting engines, and splitting formations apart. Every Zarath ship destroyed left a gap, and through that gap more human ships slipped in. It was no longer a battle. It was a hunt. Hours passed, and the sky grew darker with wreckage. The proud armadas that had once looked like endless waves of iron now looked scattered, broken, and confused. Vorak refused to retreat. His pride chained him to the fight. He shouted until his voice cracked, demanding his fleets hold formation, demanding his soldiers keep firing. But every order ended in more silence, more dead signals, more burning ships. Drak finally spoke the truth aloud, his voice heavy. "My lord, this is not war. This is slaughter. The humans are not testing us. They are teaching us." Vorak turned on him, eyes blazing. "Teaching us what?" Drak did not flinch. "That legends are born for a reason." Another blast shook the flagship. Warning lights filled the bridge, and the crew struggled to hold the ship together. Outside, human ships circled like wolves around a wounded beast. For the first time, Vorak felt something colder than rage. He felt the edge of fear. The humans had given them a chance to turn back. They had ignored it. And now the Zarath were learning what every other broken fleet before them had learned. Humans did not fight to boast. They did not fight to conquer. They fought to end threats. And when they struck, no armada in the galaxy could stand against them. The Zarath fleets were no longer the proud waves of iron that had left their home world. They were scattered lines of broken ships, their formations torn apart by human strikes. Fires burned in the cold of space, silent but bright. Wreckage drifted endlessly, a graveyard spreading wider with each hour. On the bridge of his flagship, Vorak stood with trembling claws. His pride still pushed him to shout orders, but his voice had lost its strength. Every time he demanded a charge, more ships vanished. Every time he called for a retreat, the humans blocked the way. The first human patrol had been only the beginning. Now, reinforcements had arrived. New ships slipped out of shadows, dark and silent, their shapes hard to follow. Stealth cruisers appeared without warning, striking at Zarath command ships before vanishing again. Orbital platforms hidden on moons powered up rail guns, firing with such force that even battleships split apart in single hits. Swarms of drones poured from carriers, moving in perfect unity, slicing through fighter wings like blades through smoke. The Zarath had entered Earth's region with 3 armadas. Already one was nearly gone. The second fought desperately, losing ships every hour. The third tried to hold formation, but even its commanders whispered that defeat was certain. Drak, Vorak's second in command, moved carefully to his leader's side. His face was calm, but his voice was heavy with truth. "My lord, we cannot win this war. Every move we make, they already know. Every tactic, they counter before we begin. They are not fighting us ship against ship. They are breaking us mind against mind." Vorak slammed a claw against the rail. "No. We are Zarath. We do not run. If we fall here, our people will see us as weak. We will fight until the last ship burns." Drak did not argue. He knew Vorak's pride would not allow retreat, but he also knew the end was near. He turned his eyes back to the battlefield, watching human ships weave through the chaos. They did not rush. They did not waste. Every strike was chosen. Every move was exact. To the Zoroth, it felt less like war and more like a lesson. The lesson was fear. A Zoroth commander from the 2nd Armada shouted over the comms. "We cannot hold them. Their drones cut through our lines. Our shields fall before their fire. We need orders." His voice vanished in static as his ship was torn apart. Another commander tried to rally his fleet. "Hold formation. Hold." His signal ended mid-word. Across the channels, silence replaced voices. The Zoroth leaders who had once spoken with such confidence now vanished one by one. On the human side, no boasting came. No taunts, no shouts of victory. Only silence. It was as if the humans were not fighting for glory but simply for necessity. They struck because the Zoroth had entered their region. Nothing more. Nothing less. To the survivors, that silence was more terrifying than any roar of battle. Vorak gripped the rail, his teeth bared. Why do they not speak? Why do they not demand surrender? Why do they not mock us? Drak answered softly, because they do not need to. Another wave of drones rushed forward, cutting through Zoroth defenses. Human stealth ships dropped into the middle of the 3rd Armada, blasting engines and weapons before vanishing into shadow again. The battlefield was no longer under Zoroth control. It belonged fully to the humans. Some Zoroth officers began whispering what none dared to say aloud. We must retreat. But retreat was no longer possible. Every escape path was closed. Human ships had already placed themselves in every direction, their formations like walls in the stars. A younger officer cried out, "We are trapped." Drak looked at him and did not correct him. The truth was too clear. Then a message came across the channel once more. It was Commander Reed, his voice calm, unshaken, the same as before. "You step into our region, you pay the cost." The words echoed in every Zoroth bridge. Simple words. Final words. Vorak roared in anger, his pride burning hotter than the fire outside. "We are not finished. Charge them. Every ship forward. If we fall with claws drawn." The Zoroth fleets obeyed, not out of belief but because their leader demanded it. They surged forward in one last desperate attempt, firing all weapons, engines glowing until they tore themselves apart. But the humans were ready. The first strike from orbital rails split the leading battleships. Swarms of drones tore apart the flanking wings. Human stealth ships appeared from behind, cutting through supply carriers and command vessels. The charge ended before it began. The battlefield grew still again. Zoroth ships burned, their last effort crushed. On the flagship, Vorak's eyes burned with fury. But even he could no longer deny the truth. His fleets were broken. His armadas were dying. And the humans had only begun to show their strength. Drak stood silently, his gaze steady on the endless wrecks outside the viewport. His voice was low, but it carried across the quiet bridge. The Union was right. We were warned. And we did not listen. The lesson was clear. The Zoroth had believed themselves masters of war. But in Earth's region, they had discovered the truth. Humans were not legends. Humans were reality. And reality was merciless. The Zoroth fleets were no longer fleets. They were ruins scattered across the stars. Where once 3 armadas had flown in perfect formation, now only broken hulls and burning wrecks drifted in silence. The proud war banners of Zorth were nothing more than torn metal, floating in the dark. The battlefield stretched across thousands of kilometers, but everywhere the sight was the same: shattered cruisers, split battleships, lifeless fighter wings. No signal of victory came from the Zorth. Only the steady hum of silence. On the flagship, Vorak stared out through the main viewport. His eyes burned with disbelief. The strongest fleets his people had ever built had been crushed, not in years, not in months, but in days. All his promises to his people, glory, conquest, domination, were ashes in his claws. Drac stood beside him, his voice calm but heavy. The second armada is gone. The third is scattered. Our fleet counts less than a quarter of what we began with. Of those, half are crippled and cannot fight. Vorak clenched his fists. We will rebuild. We will strike again. But even he knew his words were hollow. The Zorth had not been defeated by numbers or weapons. They had been defeated by something far deeper. Humans had fought not with arrogance, but with certainty. Their silence, their patience, their precise strikes every moment had shown that the humans had done this before. Many times before. Across the broken lines, distress signals pulsed weakly. Zorth survivors called for rescue, their voices filled with fear. Some begged for orders, others simply cried into the void. But no rescue ships came. No reinforcements dared to cross into Earth's region. The stories of human power had become more than whispers. They were truth, and no captain outside this war zone would risk sharing the same fate. The Union Council received reports through distant relays. They did not celebrate. They did not mourn. They only nodded and spoke quietly among themselves. Another warning ignored. Another empire humbled. One elder, the same who had spoken to Vorak before, whispered to his fellow counselors, "It has happened again." Pride led them to fire, and fire took them. On the battlefield, the humans did not chase the last survivors. They did not broadcast demands. They simply let silence return. The message was clear without words: Earth's region was closed. Those who entered uninvited would not leave. Drac walked through the flagship's lower decks, past injured soldiers and broken equipment. He saw faces filled with shock, warriors who had once believed themselves unstoppable now silent and pale. Some whispered prayers, others stared blankly, their minds unable to grasp the defeat. He stopped by a viewing port, where a young officer sat with his head in his hands. The officer looked up and asked in a trembling voice, "Why, Commander? Why do they fight like this? They do not conquer. They do not boast. They only destroy those who come too close. Why?" Drac had no answer. He only said, "Because it is who they are." Back on the bridge, Vorak still refused to surrender. His pride chained him to his seat, his claws digging deep into the rail. "Signal what remains of the fleet. We will gather, form lines, and strike once more. If we are to die, we will die fighting." But no signals came. The surviving ships did not answer. Some had already shut down their systems, pretending to be dead hulks in the hope that humans would pass them by. Others had already fled into deeper shadows, running wherever they could. The armadas were not broken because of losses alone. They were broken in spirit. Vorak roared in rage, his voice echoing across the bridge. "Cowards! All of you cowards!" Drac finally turned to face him fully. His eyes were steady, his tone unshaken. "No, my lord. Not cowards. Survivors. They have seen the truth, and they wish to live long enough to carry it home. Vorak glared at him, but the words struck like a blade. Outside, the humans continued their silent watch. Their ships did not close in for capture. They did not finish off every survivor. They simply held position, surrounding the battlefield with calm patience. It was as if they were saying, "You know the lesson. Take it with you. Do not return." The Zorth survivors who escaped would carry the story. They would speak of ships that moved like shadows, of weapons that cut through the strongest armor, of silence that was more terrifying than war cries. They would speak of humans who gave warnings and never repeated them twice. Vorak remained on the flagship, his pride refusing to accept defeat. But deep inside, even he could not deny it. The Zorth Armadas had been broken, not by chance, not by numbers, but by a truth too heavy to escape. Drac looked at the field of wrecks one last time. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of all that had happened. We were warned. We did not listen. And now, the galaxy will know. The broken armadas drifted in silence, a warning written not in words but in fire and wreckage. A warning that would never be forgotten. The stars above Earth's region were calm again. Smoke and fire from the shattered Zorth armadas still drifted through space, but there was no longer the roar of engines or the blast of weapons. Silence ruled the battlefield, and it spoke louder than any words ever could. On the bridge of his flagship, Vorak stared at the destruction. His claws shook as he gripped the railing. The proud fleets he had once commanded had been reduced to ruins. Thousands of Zorth soldiers were dead, and the survivors who remained were scattered and broken. Drac stood quietly behind him. His voice was calm but heavy with truth. "My lord, we have lost everything. Our armadas are broken. Our soldiers are scattered. This is not a battle we will ever recover from." Vorak's pride fought against reality, but even he could no longer deny it. Humans had not fought for glory. They had not fought for conquest. They had fought to defend their region, to protect their people, and to show the price of arrogance. The council was right, Drac said quietly. They warned us. We did not listen. And now we know why. Outside the viewport, human ships hovered silently. They did not celebrate. They did not fire upon the remaining Zorth. Their presence alone was enough. It was a reminder that Earth's region was under their control, protected by skill, patience, and strength beyond imagination. Vorak finally spoke, his voice low and heavy. "Why do they not finish us? Why do they only watch?" Drac answered softly. "Because they do not need to. They have already won. They only remind us that we were warned. That we have failed." The surviving Zorth ships began to retreat slowly, moving toward deeper space. Many of the soldiers were silent, their faces pale with fear and disbelief. The legend of humans had become real, and the galaxy would hear their story. In the Union Council chambers, reports of the battle spread quickly. Elder representatives listened quietly, knowing this was another lesson written in blood and fire. One elder said, "Humans do not need to rule the stars to be feared. Their region alone is enough to break empires." Far across the galaxy, other races whispered about what had happened. Traders, mercenaries, and explorers told stories of Zorth armadas broken in days, ships vanishing under precise, unstoppable attacks, and fleets scattered without hope. Fear and respect spread quietly. Humanity's power was no longer a mystery. Back on his flagship, Vorak remained in his command chair, staring at the stars. Drac approached him carefully. "What will you do now, my lord?" Vorak's claws rested on the metal railing, his eyes distant. We go home. We tell the story. We rebuild, but not the same way. Pride has cost us everything. Drak nodded. And the humans? Will they strike again? Vorak shook his head. No. They will not pursue. They have shown what they needed to. They do not need to conquer. They only defend. That is the power we cannot touch. Far below, the human patrol ships returned to their stations. Commander Reed's voice came over the comms one last time. Calm, steady, without threat. You were warned. Do not return. The message was simple, but its weight carried across the galaxy. It was a warning to all who might enter Earth's region uninvited. Humans did not need armies that stretched across light years. Their strength, their discipline, and their resolve were enough. The Zorath survivors carried this truth back to their worlds. They spoke of small ships that moved like shadows, of attacks that struck with perfect timing, of enemies who never boasted and never repeated warnings unnecessarily. Their tale was one of respect and fear, and it would not be forgotten. Vorak finally stood and looked out at the broken battlefield one last time. The human ships hovered silently in the distance, a quiet but impossible power that demanded acknowledgement. The galaxy would remember this day. Every species would remember it. Drak watched him and said, "You see now, my lord. The humans do not need to rule to be unmatched. They do not need to conquer to be feared." Vorak nodded slowly, a weight settling over him. Pride had brought ruin. Arrogance had brought death. And yet, he could not help but feel awe. The humans had not just defended their world, they had rewritten what it meant to be powerful. As the Zorath fleets disappeared into the dark, the human patrols returned to silence. Earth's region remained calm, a fortress unchallenged, a warning written in the stars. Humanity's shadow stretched across the galaxy, not with threat, but with certainty. And every race, every fleet, every leader who heard the story would remember, the humans had spoken once, they had warned once, and they had acted with such force that no armada could ever ignore them again. In the quiet of space, one truth became clear to all who learned it: to cross into Earth's region was to invite ruin. To underestimate humans was to invite destruction. And the shadow of humanity would always loom larger than any prideful fleet could imagine. The stars returned to silence. Humanity had spoken. And the galaxy had listened.